Snowflake is a feature-rich, pay-as-you-go cloud data warehouse platform. It is fully loaded with security features like multi-factor authentication, data encryption at rest and in motion, column-level security, row-level security, sensitive data classification, object tagging, compliance, governance, and many more. Majority of the security features are enabled based on Snowflake Edition, and for other security functionalities, Snowflake provide frameworks and they need to be designed and implemented as per your project requirements. Access control or access privileges is one of them, which define who in your Snowflake data project can access different type of resources or secureable objects. For example, if you are a premium subscriber of Amazon Prime, you can access all the Prime video content as well as ad-free Prime music. However, you cannot upload your own content, or a non-Prime customer cannot watch all the premium content or cannot even listen to the Prime music. In a similar fashion, roles or RBAC is a feature in Snowflake which allows a Snowflake data project owner to define who in his or her project can do what. So, for example, an analyst or a QA team member cannot create or alter a virtual warehouse, but they can use a warehouse or they can run a query from a table. On the other side, a development team member cannot create a warehouse, cannot create a database, but can create a schema or alter a schema, or they can create table or drop the table. This is very important concept and go beyond just access control, as Snowflake is pay-as-you-go data warehouse cloud platform. And if objects are created in uncontrolled manner, it will eat up all your Snowflake credit at no time, and the overall purpose of saving cost in the cloud will be lost. Every other database has a role and privilege concept. So what's different in Snowflake and why it is important to understand this concept thoroughly? So you may have following question in your mind. How RBAC and DAC works in Snowflake? What are the default roles exist in Snowflake when Snowflake instance is created? Why do we need so many default roles in Snowflake, and what is the purpose of each of them? What is the role hierarchy and what's so special about it? How to achieve data privacy in Snowflake and even protect our data from super user or power users. Snowflake can host many data projects under a single instance and can also have development, QA and prod environment under the same instance. So how to design and implement roles so it can be managed with ease. So if you want to build a solid understanding about access control concept in Snowflake and decode how large and complex enterprise grade multi-tenant Snowflake project implement roles and role hierarchy, then stay with me until the end of this video. Alongside the theory, I will also demonstrate everything live. Welcome back to my channel Data Engineering Simplified and to this real jumpstart course for Snowflake Data Professional. The last 19 episodes in this series already covered from history to architecture, data loading, micro-partition, time travel, cloning, stream, task, end-to-end ETL, and many more important concepts. This episode 20th, will primarily deep dive into role and access privilege concept and help you to understand how it has to be done in Snowflake and how large enterprise design their role models. We will also see the purpose of default roles provided by Snowflake and how to use them and guideline provided by Snowflake. We will practice everything using the Snowflake free trial edition and have hands-on exercise to cover all the concepts listed in this slide. Before we move to the next section, I have an important question to ask. Do you want to have mastery in the Snowflake Cloud Data Warehouse? I think you should be. There is a lot of great opportunities out there if you know Snowflake Cloud Data Warehouse. I have been adding a lot of videos to help the Snowflake community to learn Snowflake besides Snowflake certifications. The feedback I got from my audience way high than my expectations. Folks are getting certified at first attempt and scoring close to 100%. Data engineers, leads, architects, and even data managers are learning from my free content. You don't need to buy any expensive courses. Check my playlist. It includes complete hands-on Snowflake guide, SnowPro certification guide, important mock questions for certification, key SQL function series, Snowflake Python and connector series, and many more videos are on your way. So press the like button if there is anything valuable in this video for you. Let's create a user in Snowflake and see how this process works before we deep dive into roles, discretionary access control, role-based access control, and many more other features. I am in my Snowflake web UI and I am going to create users using account admin profile. If you have not seen my video on Snowflake Legacy Web UI as well as Snowflake SnowSite Web UI, please watch these videos. That will certainly help you to understand how this web interface works with respect to role. Let's validate the role first, and for that we can use select current role. And my role says I am having account admin role. I would also request you to watch my entire playlist on the context function if you are not fully aware how the context function works. The link is given here. And if the result brings something else other than the account admin, then I would request you to change your role using this use role account admin SQL command. So I have changed my role and this has executed successfully. Just to validate it, I can see my role is account admin. Good. So I'm going to create a user called user1. I can give a password and also give an attribute called must change password equals to false. You can also go to the account tab and from there you can also create a user, but I would prefer to use SQL command. So my user is created successfully. I have not assigned any role or anything else to this user. And let's log in with this user profile and see how does it look like. So I have opened another tab in my browser and I am giving this new user and the password. Let's see what happens. So I managed to log in successfully with the user1. By default, it has got role called public. And when I click on this, I don't see any other role assigned to this user. So when we create a user without assigning any role, by default, it gets a role called public role. Now I am going to execute a couple of SQL commands just to validate. So it says my current role is a public role and I would like to see as a public role user, what can I do? What all grants are available to this public role? For that, I would execute a command called show grant to role public. So what result does it bring? It says as a user 01, I can only access sample data. I have no access to any other resources within the Snowflakes. Even if you see that I do not have any warehouse associated with my role, so I cannot run any queries. I cannot really do anything other than running those queries which runs only in the cloud services and does not need any compute capacity. Let me try to create a database. Will it allow me to do that? So it says you do not have sufficient privileges to operate on this account UL13949. It means this role user1 does not have any privileges to do anything on this profile. Now there are 3 additional commands which will help you to understand how your user profile looks like. The first is describe user followed by the user name. When I execute this, it gives all the properties of the user. So it says the name of the user is user1, comment is this, and the display name is user01, login name is this, and first name, middle name, last name. All those details are available here. Now there is another SQL command which shows what all grants are available to this user 01. For that, I would run show grants to user followed by username. So no grants in given to this user. Now another thing which I can do, that show grants on this user. So it says the ownership of this user belongs to the account admin. So this is how you can check who has created your user profile and what all the properties associated with your user profile, and you can run the alter user command to change some of the properties if not everything. So couple of important points when we do the user creation in Snowflake. Account admin and security admins are the role who can create users in Snowflake. Prefer creating user using security admin role and don't create any object using account admin role. That is the best practices given by Snowflake. I have seen many projects start creating user using account admin role. When a user is created, a default public role is assigned to it. Use describe user followed by username to see user properties including its default role as well as secondary role. Use show grant to user followed by username SQL command to see all the roles assigned to the user. Use show grants on user followed by username SQL command to list who has ownership to this user like security admin or account admin. Let me create another user called user02 and we will assign a default role as a system admin. To create this role, I am going to use the account tab and let's see how this process looks like. I am in my account tab followed by users menu and I click on the create button. I can create a user through web UI without using SQL command only if I have access to the account tab, and that is possible if you are having account admin role or a security admin role. I uncheck this checkbox and I go to next. I am not filling any detail here, and here I am choosing a default role as a system admin. I have given basic detail for my user followed by the default role. Let's see how the SQL looks like. This SQL has a create user SQL command followed by another SQL statement which is on the line number 2, says grant role system admin to the user 02. So in the first case, when we have created a user through the SQL statement, we have not granted any role to the user. In this case, when I have selected a default role as a system admin, a new SQL statement has been added saying that grant role system admin to the user. I can copy this statement and will run the same command from my SQL worksheet. I am back to my worksheet, and here I have already copied pasted that SQL statement. So from 45 to 48 says create a user, and line number 49 says grant this user as a system admin role. So let's run this command. So my user 2 created successfully. The grant is also given to this user. Now let's log in with the user 2 and first see how the roles looks like. So I have opened a new tab, provided the username as password. Let me sign in. If the user is accessing the Snowflake first time, they may get some welcome to Snowflake message. I will quickly close it. Now, if you notice the profile tab, I can see that I have two roles. System admin is my default role and the public role is automatically added to every user which is created within Snowflake environment. Let me see my role through the SQL command. So I can see my role is system admin. When I describe my user profile, I can see my default role is system admin. Now, if I would like to know how many roles are assigned to me other than my default role, I can run show grants to the user 02. As we have seen earlier, the public role assigned to a user is not shown when you run show grant to user command. However, in this case, user 02 is having a role called system admin, and that's why the system admin is visible. And this role is granted by account admin. However, this is not the right way. Security admin should actually assign the role, not the account admin. And this is what the best practices recommended by Snowflake. So for this demo, we have done that. However, in your real enterprise environment, you should not do this. Now let me assign two additional roles to this user and run this command once again. So I am adding two additional roles to the user 02. The first role, I say grant role security admin to the user 02, and second statement is grant role user admin to user 02. So both the SQL statement got executed. Let me switch my tab and let me run this command once again for you. Now I can see after I have assigned two additional roles to the user 02 user, I can see total 3 roles available to this profile. To get these roles available in the menu, I have to refresh the tab. Now my tab is refreshed. Now I can see I have a system admin, security admin, user admin and public. 4 roles are there and system admin is my default role. Looks good. So this is how we can create a user and we can assign different roles to a user. If you do not assign any role to the user, then the public role is a default role which will get attached to the user. However, that will not be visible through the show grant to the user command. We have created users and understood the default role behavior and how we can associate different role to a user. Now let's decode the DAC or discretionary access control concept and what does it mean in Snowflake. In Snowflake, each object has an owner who can in turn grant access to those objects to other roles. So if you look into the below example, user 02 is created by account admin role and got ownership to this user. Let's understand it little deeper by having an example. So we have a user called user X having a system admin role and it has created MyDB, MySchema and MyTable. Since user X belongs to system admin role, the system admin eventually become the owner of these objects. User X is not the owner of this object. The user X is the entity created this object within the Snowflake instance. However, the role, in this case system admin, own the object. Any new user get the system admin role can do anything with this object because they also represent the ownership for this object being under that role. So even if you delete user X, we would not lose the access to these objects created by user X. Any other user having sysadmin role can act as an owner for these objects. So as an owner, the individual user, whether it is user X or a Y or a Z in this example, can alter this object, drop or do anything with them. Owners can also grant different privileges or access as they wish and as per their discretion, and that's why it is called discretionary access control, or in short DAC. We will learn and practice more when we deep dive in the role-based access control. For now, it may sound a little confusing, but just stay with me and follow me. So there are a lot of objects you may have under a schema or at account level, and all those objects are created by different user at different point in time. And since these users belong to a role, eventually all those objects are owned by the role and not by the individual entities or a user. This is a very important concept, and that's why you have to design your role in Snowflake very, very carefully. Okay, I am back to my web UI, and here I am going to run 3 context function: current account, current user, and current role, to see what is my account, what is my user, and what is my role. So I am in my account UL13949 and my user is admin01, and the role which admin01 has is system admin. Now if I have to list all the users to understand who has created those users, then I would run this command called show users. Show user cannot be executed through the system admin. For that I will change my role to account admin. We have created user 01 and user 2, and these users are owned by account admin. What does it mean that account admin can do anything with this user? Good. I change my role back to system admin. Let's create a database, a schema, and a table and understand the ownership with respect to other objects. My DB is created successfully. Now list all the databases. Here I can see the my database is owned by role system admin. Likewise, I created my schema, and my schema is also owned by the system admin. Now I created a table called my table. This is also owned by the system admin. So all those objects is created by admin01 user. When admin01 user was creating these objects, the admin01 user used the role system admin, and that's why system admin become the owner for this object. Now to prove that, I will go to the another tab where I already logged in with user 02, and let's see whether these objects are visible to the user 02 or not, as well as whether user 02 can drop any one of this object. So I am in my user 02 profile, and let me run this context function. And this says that I am in the same account UL13949, and my current user is user 02, and the current role used by user 02 is system admin. Good. So I am using my role system admin. I should be able to see all the databases which is created by owner system admin. I can see my database which is owned by system admin, works perfectly fine. Now I would like to see all the schema under my database. And here I can see my schema is also owned by system admin, and that's why it is also visible with user 02. My table will also work exactly the same way. Can I drop my schema as a user 02 entity? Let me try that. Yes, my schema got dropped successfully. I have no privilege trouble with user 02. So this is the concept Snowflake follows. Every object or entity created by a user owned by a role, and whichever user is having that role can operate on this object, as well as can give different grants and privileges to other roles through this ownership concept. Now let's understand what does it mean by role-based access control and how DAC and RBAC work together. All the objects in Snowflake is called secureable object, be it database or schema or a table or stages. Privileges can be granted to a role depends upon the object type. For example, a role called data engineer role wants to get all kind of privileges on a table like create table, alter table, drop table, select data from the table, including insert, delete, and truncate operation. So Snowflake allows granular level access privilege assigned to the role, and in turn the role can be assigned to a user or multiple users. That way a user having that role can perform all such operation on this object. If we take a view as a secureable object, the privilege list is different from the table and it looks like this. When it comes to warehouse, it is an account level object and it is not a schema level object. However, the rule for grant and access works in the same way. We can allow a role to create a virtual warehouse, alter a virtual warehouse, use a virtual warehouse, and drop a virtual warehouse. In general, an owner of the project will create a virtual warehouse and allow only the usage access to all the team members to use this compute power. But the project owner will not grant, create, alter, drop privileges to the team member, as compute objects are expensive objects, and if it is created without paying enough attention, you may incur a lot of cost. Let's understand this entire concept with a simple illustration and then create equivalent SQL statement to support this model. Let's say we are working in a sales order data project and we have a sales database, sales schema, and then we have a tables, file format, pipes, stages, sequences, and views under the sales schema. So this is the context we are operating on, and we also have two warehouses called load warehouse and ad hoc virtual warehouse. The load warehouse is a large warehouse and cost us more, and the another warehouse, which is named as ad hoc warehouse, is extra small and cost much less compared to the load warehouse. Since loading needs more compute and more IO intense operation, we decided to have a bigger compute for load warehouse. Now our team looks like this, where we have a project manager who wants to own everything within that sales order project. Next, we have a development team and they are responsible for creating many schema under the database. Business analyst and QA team, so their primary purpose is to use the warehouse and perform generally select statement from the table as well as from the view. So we have to create 4 distinct roles and then we grant different privileges to these roles according to their need. We also want to make sure the PM is the only role who can create warehouses and all other roles should be able to use the warehouse. Load warehouse should be used only by the development team, including other object creation under the schema, and nobody else has access to the load warehouse. This is our another requirement. PM role becomes the owner of all the object created under sales order database, including the database as well as warehouse object. The PM role will have discretion to give different grants to different role like development team members, QA as well as business analyst. Analyst and QA are more read-only kind of profile and they can read data from the table as well as from the views using ad hoc warehouse. We also want to design the role in such a way that what is done by QA team member can also done by analyst, and what development team can do can also done by the project manager, and this is what we call a role hierarchy, and we will see how does it work. Let's go to our Snowflake web UI and start creating the role and grants the privilege and validate them through the Snowsite portal. So I'm back in my web UI, and first of all I would like to check what is my current account, user, and the role. My current account is UL13949, user is admin01, and role is account admin. As we discussed, all the role has to be created with a security admin as per Snowflake recommendation, and I am switching my role to the security admin. Okay, so my current role is security admin, looks good. I'm going to create 4 different roles called PM role, dev team role, analyst role, and QA role. PM is the role which can create databases and everything inside the database, including a warehouse which is account level object. Dev team, they can do everything inside a database, but they cannot create a database, neither they can create a warehouse. Analyst and QA are the 2 roles which is more like a read-only role, can read data from a table as well as from a view, and they can also use ad hoc warehouse. So role can also be created by going through the account tab and under the account tab, and here you can click on the create new role and you can do that. However, I would prefer to do by using SQL command. So how does it look like? You can say create role followed by the role name and you can give a comment. That's simple. Our DEPM role is created. To build a role hierarchy with the security admin, I am going to grant role DEPM role to role security admin, and that is how security admin role can inherit all the privileges from DEPM role. Similarly, I am going to create another role called DE dev team role. If I want DEPM role to inherit all the privileges from DE dev team role, I have to grant DE dev team role to DEPM role. I am creating another role called DE analyst. The next statement says grant role D-analyst to role DEPM role, and this way DEPM role inherits everything, all privileges from D-analyst role. Finally, I am creating a QA role. The next SQL statement says grant role DEQA to role DE-analyst. This way DE-analyst role gets all the privileges from DEQA role. So I have created all the 4 roles, and I have also created the role hierarchy here, and let's see how does it look like, because from this statement it is difficult to visualize. I am switching to my Snowsite web page where I would be able to visualize how this role hierarchy looks like along with the role creation. I am focusing on this role. Now I can see here I have a DEPM role which is owned by security admin, and then this role inherits the DE analyst role. DE analyst role is also created by security admin, and here I have a DE dev team role which is also created by security admin, and here I can see my DE QA role. If you look into this diagram, what QA can do, analyst can also do. What analyst and dev team can do, PM role can always do, and security admin sit on the top of all of them. So this is we call a role hierarchy. So far we have not assigned any user. So that's why we see there is no user associated with this role right now. Now I'm going to create a couple of users, and to create a user as per Snowflake recommendation, I have to use user admin role. So I'm switching my role to the user admin, and I'm going to create 1 PM user, 1 BA user, 2 QA user, and 3 development user. I'm going to run all those statements. All my users are created successfully. Let's validate from our Snowsite web UI. So I can see all the users, BA user, 3 dev users, 1 PM user, and 2 QA user. They are created. The creation of the user is done by the user admin. All good. Assign the role to a user, I always have to use the security admin role. So I'm switching my role to the security admin, and the syntax is very simple. Grant role DEPM role to the user PM role. This is good. I am assigning analyst role to a BA user. I am assigning the QA role to the QA users, and I'm assigning the dev role to the dev users. So they all executed successfully. Let me go back to the Snowsite to validate it. I can see it very clearly that DEPM role is assigned to 1 user, D analyst role is assigned to 1 user, QA role is assigned to 2 users, and dev team role is assigned to 3 users. Now I would first try to log in with a PM role and see whether I can switch my role to the different roles or not. I am signing in with my PM user. So here I can see that it says my PM user. I have so many roles. Even though I have not assigned so many roles to the PM user, I have only assigned 1 role to the PM user. Since the PM user is in the role hierarchy, it has got access to all the role, which is D analyst, D dev team, and QA. And you can switch your role and perform different operation. So let's check the context. My account. My current user is PM user, and my current role is a public role. Now I would like to change my role to the PM role, and this is how I can switch my role to the DEPM role. However, I am allowed to switch the role to any other role. Now I switch my role to the dev team, and let's see. I can see my current role is a dev team. Now I switch my role to DE analyst role. And finally, I switched my role to the DEQA role. So this is how the role hierarchy allows you to switch your role. Being a project owner, you can switch your role to any other role under your role hierarchy. If I log in with analyst, the analyst will automatically inherit the DEQA role, and the dev team will not inherit because they don't have anything under them. So this is how the role hierarchy works. We managed to create 4 different roles: PM role, DE dev team role, analyst role, and QA role. And we also have created couple of users and managed to map role between the user. Now we have not yet given any privileges to this role, and that is the next activity we are going to do. I am with my PM user and my role is dev team role. Let me switch my role to the PM role. So as a PM role, can I create a warehouse? I see I do not have any warehouse attached with me, neither I have any database access. Let's try to create a database. It says that I do not have sufficient privileges to operate on account UL 13949. Creation of a database is an account level activity. Also, creating a warehouse is an account level activity. So what we will do, we will go back to our admin profile and give privileges for this user to create database as well as warehouse. So I'm switching my profile to system admin. Let's check what is my current account role and user. I am with user admin01 and my role is system admin. If I have to give a privilege to PM role where PM role can create warehouse, this is how the SQL syntax looks like. What it says, grant create warehouse on account to role DEPM role. This role can create warehouse. The next SQL statement says, grant create database on account to role PM role. The PM role can create warehouse and the PM role can also create databases. And since PM role can create databases, it can create almost everything within the database. Okay, I'm in PM user with this and I'm going to check whether I'm able to create a database or not. Good, I'm able to create a database. The grant create database given on the account works successfully for my role. Once PM role has these two privileges, it can create a lot more things and also give a grant to other user within its project. So as a PM role, I would like to create two warehouses. One is that load warehouse of size extra large and another is that ad hoc warehouse of extra small size. So let me run this SQL statement. It says that as a public, it says that insufficient privileges because the role I am operating on is a public role. So let me change this role. So my role is a PM role. Now I'm going to create load warehouse. So the load warehouse is created successfully. Next, ad hoc warehouse. So ad hoc warehouse is also created successfully. Let me list it. I can see two warehouses are created and the role, these two warehouses are owned by this role. It means PM role can grant any access to any other role. Next, I'm going to create a database called sales database, sales schema, and an order table. I'm just keeping it very simple for demonstration purpose. So these three different objects are created. Let me validate it. I can see my database, sales database is created and the owner is DEPM role. And when I hover on the sales schema, it also says the owner of this schema is DEPM role. And when I hover onto the table, this also says that it is owned by the role DEPM role. Now, if you look into the role hierarchy, if I switch to any other user who has account admin role or a security admin role, they should also be able to see any object created by DEPM role because they are part of the role hierarchy. And let's try that out. So I am in my 13943 account. This is my user account admin01 and this is my role account admin. Now let me go back to the object explorer pan. Here I can see that object DB and it clearly says that owner of this object is DEPM role. And if I expand it, the schema is also owned by DEPM role and the table is also DEPM role. So this is how the role hierarchy has an importance that any other role in the role hierarchy above that role can see and get the access to the object. Now the next activity, what we are going to do, the dev role, analyst role and QA role should have different access level or different grants. So the dev team should be able to create objects within the schema. The analyst should be able to read the data from the table and the QA should also be able to read the data from the table or the view. So this is the next activity we are going to perform. The first grant we are going to give to the dev team role and they would have access to the sales database. So the statement executed successfully. Once I have given the usage privilege to the database, then I can give all privileges to the schema and all privileges on the table in the schema. And this is how the statement looks like. So the dev team role has got all privileges on the schema, sales schema. And the next statement says grant all privileges on all tables in schema, sales schema to the role dev team role. This looks good. The next statement says, give usage grant to the warehouse, load warehouse to the role dev team. So this 5 statement says anybody having a dev team role can access to the sales DB, sales schema and access to any tables within the sales schema. They can also use load warehouse as well as ad hoc warehouse. And in a similar fashion, we are going to give the access to the QA role as well as analyst role. It says grant usage on database, grant usage on schema, grant select on all tables in schema, and grant usage on warehouse, ad hoc warehouse. So all the grant statement executed successfully. I'm going to run exactly the same set of statement and allowing the analyst role to get access to the sales DB, sales schema, all tables in the schema, and ad hoc warehouse. And before I switch my role, let's perform this insert operation being a PM role into the table. So my ad hoc warehouse is resumed automatically and I can see one record available into the orders table. Good. Now I'm switching my role. I logged in with my dev user 01 and since I'm logging in first time, it is again showing a welcome screen. Let me minimize everything. First I'm changing my role to DE dev team from public. Now let's see what warehouses I can see. So I am having access to the ad hoc warehouse and the load warehouse. Both are visible to me. Looks. So my grant is working fine. What all database I can see? So I can see sales database and Snowflake sample data. Good. I can see sales schema and all other schema available under Snowflake sample database. So this all looks good to me. So I am able to see warehouses, databases and schema. Let's check the context once again. Okay, so I am dev _ user 01 and my role is DE dev team. Let me insert the data into the table, order table. I managed to get one record inserted. And I can see one record inserted by DEPM role and another record inserted by DE dev team role. So this is working fine. Good. Let's try to create a database and see whether it is allowed to do that or not. No, I do not have any privileges to create a database. Let me create a warehouse. No, I do not have sufficient privileges to create a warehouse. Now switching to my QA role, and again I am logging in first time. So let me minimize the welcome screen. Let me switch my role to the DE QA role. Let's see what all warehouses I can see. So I can see only ad hoc warehouse, perfectly fine. Can I see any database? Yes, I can see sales database along with my sample database. Yes, I can see sales schema, looks good, which is created by DEPM role, good. Let me revalidate my account and role. So my current role is DEQA and my user is QA user 01. Can I insert a record into the order table? Again, it says that I do not have sufficient privileges to operate on the table. Now let me create a database. No, I do not have any privileges. Let me create a warehouse. No, I do not have. So this is how I have really restricted the QA team to perform only the select statement. But can I perform a select statement? Let's try that out. Yes, I can perform the select operation. So select operation is a valid operation for me and I can do that as a QA user. We have covered a lot of concept and seen how users, role and role hierarchy work. I'm sure you might still be little confused and not very clear how this overall things works together. Let's take another example and try to understand how this primary or a default role hierarchy and secondary role work. Let's say our Snowflake instance is hosting two projects. One belongs to marketing team called marketing analytics and other belongs to sales team called sales analytics. Each project has 4 different roles. We have seen it earlier like PM role, dev team role, analyst role and QA role. Each role has user associated with it and you can see in this diagram. The head of analytics has grants to PM role from both the projects. Each project manager role has grants to dev team role and so on. So the role hierarchy is very clear from this diagram. Let's say we have a team member called Sam who is working under marketing team as a data engineer and it so happened that he has to also contribute as a tester in the sales analytics project. So we can simply grant sales _ PRJ _ QA role to Sam and he will automatically get read-only access to the sales project without having any issue. And the PM of the sales project very well knows that this role which is assigned to Sam will only be able to perform select statement from the table and from the view. However, there is a challenge. Sam has to change his role every time he has to perform some operation on the sales project and that will make his life little complicated and cumbersome. Here, the secondary role comes to rescue him. The purpose of secondary role is to allow the user to perform all create operation using his or her primary role and allows all the select operation from all available role without changing the context every time. Before secondary role concept, which was introduced last year, September 2021, it was very cumbersome task to switch role every time you have to access a table or a database from a different role privileges. Let's see all those concepts in action. So this is how the role hierarchy looks like in my Snow site. It starts with analytics head followed by PM role, dev team role, analyst role, and the QA role. And this is for the marketing team and this is for the sales project team. Now let me log in with the marketing team development user profile and see how does it look like. Let's check how this development user's profile looks like. Here it is. This user's current role is marketing project development team and his name is Sam. Let's describe his profile. So he does not have any default role because he's working only in one project. Neither he has any secondary role. Looks good. I am changing his role to the dev team role. And let's see what all grants are available to the user Sam. So he has only one role assigned called marketing project development team role. So he can do everything within this project. So in this project, I have a marketing database, marketing schema, and analytics table, and this user can see the data from the analytics table. Let me execute this. So he is able to see the data. Now I have to assign another role to this user so this user can get access as a sales project QA. For that, I have to change my role to the security admin. And then I will execute this command called grant role sales project QA to user Sam. So before I assign the default role and the default secondary role, let me go back to the Sam's profile and see how does it look like. So now I'm going to run this show grant to the user Sam. And I can see this person has got two different roles. Let me switch to this role. So now my role got changed, and the moment my role got changed, I can see I have access to the sales database, I have access to lead schema, and my table is lead table. Once I execute this, I got this result ABC. But if I change my role back to marketing analytics, I won't be able to execute this query. And that is my challenge because in this role, this context is not valid. And here my secondary role comes into the picture. Let me go back to other profile and set my default role as well as secondary role. So I am making Sam's default role as a marketing project dev team. It got executed successfully, and I am setting Sam's secondary role as all. This also got executed successfully. So let me describe the user Sam again. And I can see my default role is marketing project dev team role and the secondary role is all role. Let's check the context. So context still says this. Let me change my role to the marketing project dev team role. Now my current role is marketing dev team role. And in this case, if I try to run this command, it will still throw an error because I'm not authorized. So I have to use a command called use secondary role. So my role is still marketing project dev team role, and I should be able to access this table without changing my role. This is how the secondary role helps you to change your context without actually changing your context, and it makes your life very easy while doing the development. So we have understood the purpose of my default role, my secondary role, and how the role hierarchy works. I hope this example gives some degree of understanding this complex concept of role, secondary role, and the role hierarchy. When we first create or get Snowflake instance, there are total 6 default roles which are created along with the Snowflake instance. Org admin and public roles are not part of role hierarchy. We had seen it earlier that every user created in Snowflake automatically gets the default role, public role. Rest of the roles like account admin, security admin, sys admin, user admin are part of a role hierarchy. The primary intent of user admin role is to create user within the Snowflake instance. The primary intent of security admin role is to create roles and grant the roles to the different user created by user admin. The primary intent of system admin role is to create different database objects and the compute warehouse. The account admin role is primarily meant to manage the account level administrative tasks like timeout, network policy, and many more things. This role, the account admin should not get involved with user creation as well as role creation. However, I have seen many data projects do not understand how this role has to be utilized as per Snowflake recommendation. The account admin role is a most powerful role in Snowflake because it is in the top of the hierarchy and can really do anything what can be done by system admin as well as user admin or security admin. How would you protect your data from any specific role? To do that, you can make sure you do not grant any privileges which allows them to select, insert, delete, and truncate. And by doing this, you can make sure a super user or a privileged user can alter or drop a table. However, they cannot select, insert, delete, or truncate a table. And that is how we can protect our data from a super user. I assume this short episode has managed to throw enough light how the role and grant works in Snowflake. Writing SQL statement to create user role and user role mapping would be very error prone activity, and many data team build stored procedure to automate such repetitive tasks. So our part 1 of episode 21 will deep dive on stored procedure and how we can leverage this procedural language to automate many repetitive tasks. Stored procedure in Snowflake can also be written in JavaScript, and that will be an interesting topic for many Snowflake developers. I hope you have been enjoying this Snowflake learning series, and if there is anything you liked in this session, press the like button and leave a comment. Happy learning and best of luck.